Welcome back to the channel. I'm Syd, Mackie's on the camera, and today we are quite obviously not in our workshop. We are actually in Cumberland, British Columbia at the NOBL Wheels headquarters, and I am going to build a wheel. With the assistance of Liam. Liam is our victim for today. He does not know what he's getting into. What components do we need for this wheel set?
Key things: rims, hubs, spokes, and nipples are kind of where you're going to be starting. And there's a few small tools like kind of a nipple puller. Usually a T-handle makes things a little bit easier than kind of the older style butterfly tools. So this is kind of what most average wheel builders would be using, where you twist from the outside of the nipple.
Yes.
The biggest downside is that it's a lot slower, a lot harder to reduce the wind-up, and you're more likely to damage the nipples if you've got nice colorful nipples. Yes. This goes from the back, and it just means you can add way more predictable tension to the wheel, reduce wind-up a little bit better, and way less likely to round off anything.
Cool. So let's try to use that. That seems like a better bet.
So I guess the first step would be to kind of pull your nipples and kind of add. Most builders will use kind of a lube normally.
Okay.
At the moment, we're using the Stan spoke powder, which we find gets the best results. Way easier to clean at the end, way less oil, and your hands stay a lot cleaner through the process. Gold alloy nipples, which are in this one just here. Roughly 66, if you can kind of predict that. If you get exactly 66, I'll buy you a coffee as well.
Oh, look, okay. I see. So you just shake it until they all like...
If you tap the side of the box with your hand, they'll generally kind of line themselves up.
That's not nearly 66. I have no idea what... That could be 66.
And the next step would be if you wanted to add a couple of dabs of spoke powder.
Okay.
And then if you close the box and just give it a real good shake. You just spent all that time lining them up and it's all going to jiggle it up again. If anyone's curious on the nipples, these are 16mm Sapim, double square, secure lock. Kind of the best we found to build with and hold the best tension.
I am like way more nervous about this than usually. It's like we're doing like a live show here. People are going to realize how much we usually edit out.
First step is going to be just make sure your lacing jig is kind of set up to the right size. It should already be on the 29 setting there. Yep. And then the first thing to look out for with the rims, because all of our rims are asymmetric, so we've got 2mm offset on the center channel there.
Okay.
So the trick with this is the front rim and the rear rim are always opposite. The bigger offset on the front is going to be this way round. Very nice stickers just on the rim there, just to identify front and rear to make it super obvious. The fronts are generally about 40 to 50 grams lighter. The rears have a little bit of extra padding. On the front, the brake side is always the higher tension side, and that's always the side with the larger gap or the larger offset. And then on the rear, you'd flip the rim the opposite way, have the drive side on here, and that's always the high tension on the back.
Okay, drive side is the high tension on the back, but this is the front.
This is the front wheel. We'll start with the front.
Brake side is the bigger gap. I can see that you have like an encyclopedia in your head of this and like what different builds are.
It kind of got burned in,
yeah.
Unfortunately. If you get your rim in, so you've got the larger offset at the top here.
Okay. And then so brake side on the top.
When you pull your hub, you'll just want to start with the brake side on the top as well.
Okay.
I think the next step's going to be picking some spokes.
So this is the front, so 281, 287.
You can generally get away with rounding up or down by about 1 mil.
I've already forgotten the numbers.
So 281 on the non-drive side, and then 287 on the drive. So these are our D-lights here, the more compliant option. So if you just want to pull 16 from the 281 and 16 from the 287, they do come oiled up from the factory, so it's good just to give them a good wipe. Generally, if you pull a batch out and get 16, the build will go well. It's a little bit of good luck.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Are you serious? Wait, I should count again because I don't believe
Everyone's going to think that was scripted. If there's exactly 66 nipples in that box, you should buy a lotto ticket.
If I do it twice, you guys should hire me just to pull the spokes. I mean, 17 though, like, it's not terrible.
First step is going to be identifying your key spoke. Key spoke is generally one over from the valve hole. So if you find the valve first hole's here, and then so you would go to the second hole generally. Okay. And then where you start on the hub depends on the size of the wheel and the lacing pattern that you want to go for. So if you're going for generally 29-inch wheels, we build 2-cross. That's exactly the number of times the spokes switch. One spoke comes out at this angle and the other one comes over here. the amount of times they cross over each other before they hit the rim is the cross pattern.
Okay.
More crossing is generally a stiffer wheel, longer spokes. First step will be to find the logo that you want to line up with the valve hole.
Okay.
This definitely isn't essential, but we like to kind of do it for all of our builds.
According to the internet, logo lining up is extremely
very
important.
essential, yeah.
All right, so the logo's here.
This will be your spoke for the non-drive side. So if you counted the first hole and then go around 3 from there, so you'd go, this one's in the middle, so you go 1, 2, 3, and that would be your key spoke.
And that'll keep the logo with the logo.
You'll keep the logo with the valve there.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll actually flip this up the other way just for the key spoke there. So you want to go 1 over and then the second. So if you drop the hub on the other way around.
Oh, okay.
So the trick here would be kind of, if you pop a nipple on the end of that first, I like to hold it like a pencil almost.
I should not have had so much coffee this morning.
So for the first view, it's nice to put the nipple in all the way first. And then you want to turn clockwise and just normally kind of 3 or 4 turns just to get the threads caught, and then just do a little pull on the spoke just to make sure it's caught on there. So far, so good.
Yeah, that was not as hard as I was expecting.
If you want to pull 6 more of these, and then just put them in alternating around this up here.
So not here, but this one. 1, 2, 3. So tell me again why it's 3. So this will be the other side. This will be that hole that we skipped.
Exactly.
And then this is the other side, and then, okay, all right. I feel like I would be very bad at doing this for a job because, like, I don't know, I don't do very well with repetitive tasks.
And then eventually you'll get to a point where the hub's centered and the spokes are kind of keeping it in place, so that you'll have to put the spoke through the hole first and then the nipple and find it inside of the rim.
I can tell that it's starting to get more attention. I'm sure I'm doing this like maddeningly slowly.
It's faster to do it slow than it is to do it twice.
So over your tenure here at NOBL, do you know how many wheels you've built?
I don't know exact numbers. I do know that last year I built 560-ish wheels.
And how long have you been here at NOBL?
I've been with NOBL for almost 4 years now. Joined as a junior wheel builder, kind of learned everything from there when we were over in the Fraser Valley, and then NOBL made the move to Vancouver Island and did a little bit of remote work with them for about a year, and then decided it was time to kind of make the move too, and definitely no regrets at all about the move to the island. Absolutely, yeah. So you got one side in?
Yeah, and we did end up with 3 holes over here, so.
Perfect,
Good.
the math checks out. So the next step is going to be if you want to flip the wheel the other direction.
Okay, here, so we're going in here.
You're going to go in this one, just here.
Wrong. Slightly more challenging.
Check that you want to do is if you twist this the whole way around and then look through the valve hole, you can check to see if the logo lines up.
Ah, nice.
32 hole, 28 versus 24. A lot of people actually choose to run mixed combinations, especially more popular in road and gravel. But we're starting to see 28, 32 become way more normal on mountain bikes now. The biggest difference is generally stiffness, slightly weight as well, but mostly to do with stiffness. The more spokes, effectively, the stiffer the wheel, and the less spokes, the more compliant the wheel. Road or in gravel will opt for kind of a 24, 28 situation. Most mountain bikes will kind of start at 28 and then most up to 32, and then all the weirdness like unicycle wheels and kind of heavier bikes can go up to a 36 hole.
My major mission here is to not scratch anything. Actually, my major mission is to not make Liam have to completely redo this.
So once you kind of got those in, it's always good to kind of pick it up into your hands, pop the valve at the top, and then just kind of eyeball it and check that everything's evenly spaced. You've got 2 holes between every section.
So 2 holes, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay.
And then you want to drop your drive side spokes in from the top.
So maybe while I work on this, we could talk about why I am not doing a bird spoke setup. It was a unanimous decision that was going to be way too much.
I think first wheel definitely makes sense to start on steel spokes and kind of learn the patterns and learn about tensioning, and then once you're ready, move on to the bird spokes. Generally, I'll kind of pull it up to about 90 degrees and then let all the J-bends just turn on themselves, and then the spokes are kind of locked in place then. Then if you flip it over and then pop it back in the stand.
How often do you poke yourself in the eye with a spoke?
Haven't yet, touch wood. Because you're doing a 2-cross pattern, if you want to start with this one or this one, then you want to go over this one, so there's 1 cross, and then you want to go under this one. This is where the hands get quite fiddly, bending it round and not scratching.
Over this one, under that one, to this
So you always
hole.
go over one first and then under another.
Over, under, skip one. Okay.
Awesome, and then same again. So if you pull it up to 90 and just kind of let the spokes settle.
All right, what's the next step?
If you want to pop the wheel out into your hands, and then using your palms, just press on both sides of the spokes here, just to kind of push them in.
Okay, I see.
When you pop that onto the end of the nipple, the little nub will touch the end of the spoke when it's finished drilling. So the longer the nub, the less it will turn the spoke.
Okay.
So if you're going for red, that's kind of a super aggressive amount of drilling that you're going to do. So probably be good to start on the yellow and then do that on the high tension side. And then you can just press and hold as hard as you want there, and you'll feel it stop once the I wouldn't go the yellow on the other side, I would go for the white on the other side, so a little bit more forgiving.
So flip it over.
Yeah, you can flip over, it might make it a little bit easier to get in and out of.
This is the white one.
You get very fast at this stage eventually. Easiest way to tell is if you quickly spin the wheel, you'll be able to see if there's any threads at all sticking out. Cool, and then generally I'll just pick the wheel up, just do one final QC in your hands, everything looks good. Spokes feel good.
Austin end cap.
End cap back in there. This is definitely the worst stage to find a mistake, but also essential. Yeah, that's looking like a good wheel. To the stand.
I have technically done this phase before, but it didn't go great, so see if we can learn a thing or two.
This is the double square T-handle that you want. You've just put the wheel in the sand, but you're gonna have to take it back out quick now and just check the dish, and that will kind of give you an idea of how many turns to do on both sides, just to keep the wheel centered. Three main parts of this are going to be the dish, where the hub is in relation to the rim and how centered, the tension, which is how tight the spokes are, and then the true, how straight the wheel is. Pop that onto the rim.
Oh wow, okay.
And then when you press this button, it'll drop to there, and then you flip the rim over, and you'll be able to kind of measure.
Do you usually put this down, or are you doing this all with?
Usually in one hand.
Okay.
So I'd usually hold it from the bottom there, and then if you press that button in so that the pin pushes up, and if you push it up to exactly that, and then when you flip it the other way, you'll have a gap. So if you let go of the button now, and then flip the rim over the other way, and then when you drop that on, and then don't press the button, you'll be able to see where your dish is in relation to the other side of the wheel.
Not pressing the button.
The easiest way to visualize this is if you pull on these spokes, you can see the end cap moves away from there.
Yep.
So that means you want to tighten this side to pull it towards the pin, and then effectively, every time you add a couple of rounds of tension, you'll recheck the dish, and at the end, you'll have a very slight gap on the high tension side. That way, when the spokes settle, the wheel will be perfectly centered.
And the brake is the high tension side on the front.
Exactly that, yeah. If you give the wheel a quick spin, you can just quickly eyeball how straight roughly it is after you're lacing.
We have some wheels that I've been riding that are less true than that.
Always start at the valve just to keep your life super simple. And so you're going to tighten the drive side, like the opposite side here, the lower side. Okay. So if you always start after the valve here, so this first one, kind of a little bit more of a brain workout. You just kind of want to roughly calculate how many you want to add. I always count them in half turns. So like one turn of the tool turns the nipple half one full rotation. On this wheel, with the amount of dish that it's got, I would probably give yourself 4 half turns or kind of 2 full rotations on this one.
All right.
And then yeah, skip one and then to that one.
And just do the same on all of them.
Exactly, yeah. The same amount the whole way around, so you don't kind of mess up what you just did with the drills. Definitely a lot lower consequence at this stage of low tension in the wheel. The further you get down the line, the smaller changes make bigger differences.
Yeah, I think that's sort of how my wheel truing experience has gone, is like just generally just make it worse.
Yeah, if you try and jump onto a pre-built wheel and do that one first, definitely a lot more higher consequence. A couple of turns can really throw it out. And then if you give the wheel a quick spin, you can see if you were out on any of them, because it will have then made it more wobbly.
Sure, I do not think they made it more wobbly.
Fairly evenly, it should be in the same-ish position. And then the other thing that we like to do is kind of work the spokes in a fair bit. So at the start, I'll just kind of go around the wheel, just squeezing the spokes like this, and then you can squeeze them here as well. And the more you kind of flex them throughout the process, the less likely you are to get creaky spokes after they've been ridden for a while.
I've seen people do this. I did not know what it was doing.
Yeah, once we get to higher tension, we'll use a tool just to kind of flex them a little bit, but by hand generally makes a pretty big difference. And then it's always good now just to double check your dish again, just to see where you're at. It's definitely a difference now. Flip it. It's almost bang on. You've actually got a little bit more dish on the high tension side, which is kind of exactly where you want it now.
Oh, look at that.
Almost
It's
like
Liam knows what he's doing.
Because you want to get even tension the whole way around and make sure you're kind of getting an accurate reading, you want to aim for the middle of the spoke with this part here.
I'm like not clear where I'm putting this at all. Maybe I need you to demonstrate this one first.
So effectively, I'm going to pop it on here. And then as you let go, it will give you a tension. So we're just under 2. And then I'm just going to go around the wheel like that and just kind of eyeball it.
So fast.
At the start, I'm not reading the numbers. I'm just kind of seeing where the arrow lands to see roughly how even the wheel is. The mistake that you could make here would be like tightening some, loosening some to try and get them all even. But what happens is the further you get down the build, once these are about 70%, there's a high chance they'll all be exactly even already. They'll just kind of work themselves in because of the crossings and the bends. So it takes them a little while.
Even though that wasn't reading evenly, you're like...
Definitely close enough. If something was way out, you'd be able to feel if one of these spokes was wobbly. That's why the squeeze is also in your head. You're also thinking about how loose. You'd be able to feel if one was kind of way different, or if you'd missed 4 turns on one of the spokes. I like to think of it as like a game. The less moves you do, the better the wheel will effectively be. The more you're turning the nipples, effectively the worse the build will be. So now I would just kind of add more tension to both sides evenly. So I would probably go around the wheel and do, looking at the tensions, probably 3 half turns on this side and then 2 on this side to kind of get me to where I'm at.
So would you go all the way around one side and do the 3s?
Yeah, so I'd start at the valve, and then with holding the spoke, it might make your life a little easier if you come from this side and then hold like up here. This is where you'll kind of get your calluses on the inside of your fingers. So I like to hold it like that. Okay. So and then you can really feel when you turn the nipple, the spoke, if it's trying to wind up or not.
Okay, so we're doing 3 on this side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we do 2 on the other side.
Yeah, so tension-wise, yeah, it's feeling good. Probably at about 60, 70% tension now. They're way closer now than they were a minute ago. Okay. That one's a little high. Generally, if you find one that's a little high, the one next to it will be a little low. Okay. If you add tension to this spoke, it's going to take tension off of this one. Okay. And it's going to add tension to the opposite side spoke. So moving one spoke generally affects 4 different spokes. Okay. But just kind of quickly eyeballing it, they're looking pretty even. Give it a spin now, just work it with your hands one more time. Perfect. So it should be in the same position when you flip it back over again. Yeah, so we did 3 on one side, 2 on the other, but it didn't change where it is because that other side has just a little bit more pull. Kind of the next logical step would be to get them kind of as even as possible before you do any truing. Even in the spokes out with the tension meter, we'll naturally true it a little bit for you and just put it where it wants to be.
Oh, you did this so fast. Okay.
So that one's 2.5. 2.5. See, that one's a little low there.
Should we tighten it?
So then I would tighten that one, yeah. Definitely on your first wheel, this is going to be the more time-consuming bit, kind of picking up and putting down the tools, and then I'll just check that one again just to see. It's got a little bit closer. If you check the next one just to see if that one's high, because that one's a little high now, so if you do a quarter turn down on that one, and then when you go back to the other one, that probably boosted it up by about 10 points.
Okay, so that was this one.
It's getting a little closer, and then I would maybe add a quarter turn to that one. You're just kind of incrementally bringing stuff closer. It definitely doesn't have to be perfect. Now that you flip the wheel over at this stage, this side will be the lower tension side. So on average, you'll see a little bit more variance in between the spokes before we bring them up to tension. This will be the side more likely throwing things out as well. Your dish is already good. So once we have these tensions right, you should be kind of ballpark ready to push up to about 80% finished.
So how much exactly are we? This is like...
So that one's on 1.5.
Yeah, and then this one's like 2. Basically.
2. And then what's the next one on? I would maybe do 3 or 4. So that one's on about 1.5 as well. So in theory, when you bring this one down to 1.5, this one will get tightened back up ever so slightly. So I would maybe do a turn and a half down on that one. Or a half and a quarter, if that makes any more sense. But I call a half turn a turn. So now you're kind of working on the 1.5 as being your target there. So anything between 1.4 and 1.6 will be what you want to aim for. I would do maybe another half turn off of that one. This stage as well as kind of stress relieving the spokes, you will feel a difference if there is anything kind of crazy out. Even the difference that you were seeing on the gauge there between 2 and 1.5, you'd probably feel that at this point. Not to mention that when you spin the wheel in a second, you would notice a decent sized hop if it's only one spoke out. It's pretty straight for not doing any truing yet at all. Perfect. Well, this is the part that's a little bit more brain involved and kind of a little bit more thinking about your next move because it affects quite a few spokes. So I would generally give the wheel a good spin, bring this in just so you can kind of get an idea of how straight you are. Cool, so not too much of a hop up and down, but a fair bit of a side to side. And then if you look closer, you can kind of see that sometimes it comes off at a slight angle. The nice thing about building with carbon rims is there's no weld, so you don't get that big twitch that you get on a lot of the cheaper alloy rims. Effectively, you're kind of trying to take out the ups and downs first and then the side to sides after. So here I'm seeing it's touching there all the way back, so I'm going to add a tiny bit here, a little bit more on these two than I just did to those, and then a tiny bit here. And then I'm also going to take a tiny bit off of these two. The ups and downs are a little bit harder to get out than the side to sides. The ups, to take a straight hop up and down, you'll want to loosen all of the spokes in one. To take out side to side, you're generally focusing on one side. If you've got a rim that's making contact in one point, you just kind of add tension. Say you've got a touch here, I would add tension to a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the one surrounding it. And that way it pulls the rim up, but in a straight line.
I will say that most of the truing I've done is when something has already gone like wildly wrong. So you're like, whoop, there it is. I guess it goes in or goes that way a little bit there.
So what I like to do is like find where it would start. So I'd kind of eyeball it. You've got one that goes like up there. So I kind of find where it starts and just roughly work out how many spokes are that are affecting that kind of diagonally up movement.
I feel like you're seeing things that I'm not seeing here, but okay, so right in here, I think.
And then which direction does the rim look like it's going kind of like diagonally upwards?
Yeah.
So in theory, if you were to check these tensions, these would be a little higher than say somewhere else on the wheel, like over here. Yes, exactly that. So if you were to take a quarter turn off of this one and a quarter turn off of this one, so if the wheels say it's pulling to the right, but it's going diagonally upwards as well, generally it means you'll want to loosen the spokes on that side because they're pulling it away. But if it's going downwards, you'll kind of want to tighten the spokes on the opposite side at the same time, because then you're kind of pulling it back into itself. At this stage, you'll kind of just make a few changes, get it fairly close to straight, and then once you get it straight, the rest of the build should be pretty smooth sailing as you just add even tension the whole way. So the first one I'd start with is probably from here and back in that direction. So as you rotate the wheel around here, you'll see it will go diagonally up left, starting from that spoke to about there.
Okay.
So what you want to do is probably loosen, I would loosen this one, and this one, maybe just a quarter of a turn max. And then if you add tension to this one, and this one, just the same amount. Yeah, so you're just working in that one section and kind of isolating that one hop.
I think it's better.
At this point, I let Liam take over for a few minutes because after all, this was a wheel that was going to be sent to a customer and we needed to make sure it was up to the standard of wheels that NOBL builds, which is pretty high. And let's be honest, what took him a minute or two probably would have taken me an hour.
It's definitely easier to get the wheel pretty close to dead straight at this point, and then when you're doing the rest of the build, as long as you're adding tension evenly, the wheel should be almost perfect at the end. Or already it's straight enough that a lot of manufacturers would probably send it out the door that straight.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm getting from this is that I might be able to build my own wheels, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to get to the point to build them to the quality that you guys do. Because I thought it was straight like 10 minutes ago.
You could absolutely build them strong enough by just tightening stuff evenly, and as long as the hops aren't too far out, it's kind of hard to go wrong. Yeah, getting them dead straight is kind of the part that's the most time consuming, I would say. At this stage, it definitely makes sense to flip the wheel around and just check your true and start from the other side. If you want to check your dish again, should be just a couple of mils out still. Perfect. So now Now, if you add tension to both sides, it should bring us fairly close to about 95% done. So now you're at 2.3-ish, so you've still got a little ways to go tension-wise. So I would do 3 on this side and 2 on the other. Generally, I will do one whole side at a time. It just seems to affect the overall true a little bit less that way. I think if you just work on the one side, then the opposite side, the amount it affects it is hopefully even the whole way around. The other reason why is it's easier for me to jump 2 than it is to jump 1. Just on the 32-hole wheel, the spokes are so close together that naturally, as I move the wheel around, the 2-spoke gap is a little bit nicer than the 1. These are all things that I've never said out loud before and have just always been in my head, just naturally done them. It's quite interesting to hear it.
How do you know when you're done?
Final tension depends on a few things. The spoke that you use is dependent, how thick the gauge is of the spoke. Our max tension for a mountain bike rim is 125 to 135 kilograms of force, which can be a different reading depending on which gauge you're using between the Supreme gauges, the Park Tool gauges. Road wheels and gravel wheels built to less. Bird spokes, slight variance on the final tension that we end with.
Okay, so it's
Looking pretty close.
a little wobble.
And then with this tool, so if you start on this side, it can be used both ways. So you'll just pop it on here and just work around the wheel and just kind of stress relieve them like that. So there's 6 more to do that side. Yeah, you definitely don't need to go too much. It's just enough to separate them and then just kind of stress relieve ever so slightly. And then other side.
Okay, it's a little wobble, but...
That's right, maybe I'll give you a quick true. And then the last 2 stages would be to check your dish again and then just add the final amount of tension and that will kind of put you exactly right. And then a final true. It's close enough that you could ride it without any issues right now. Sure. It's just the OCD in me would not allow that to go out the door until it's exactly straight there. I
feel like I could get to a point where I could build my own wheels. Like the level of perfection that you guys do. Like you're seeing things that I don't see and fixing them, which is really cool.
That would be kind of the minimum acceptable straightness. And I'd probably spend a minute or 2 more just to get it dead straight. By the time you mount the tire and get everything sorted and add air, the tensions are going to be changed so much that it would throw the whole thing off anyway. The main reason we go that straight is so that when someone can pull their new wheel out of the box and they spin it in their hands, it's like arrow straight in front of them. Ever so slight gap that you've got there, when these spokes settle down into tension, your dish will be exactly in the middle.
Huge thanks to NOBL and of course Liam for putting up with us for a couple hours here. I feel like I learned a ton. I'm not ready to be a wheel builder. Huge respect to these guys. It's really, really impressive what they do. And I'm sure this would have taken you like 20 minutes?
15.
Been like 2.5 hours.
Fastest wheel ever, probably under 7, I would say, for a super predictable build, but on average, 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, on that note,
this is how you build a wheel in 1 minute.
Start by collecting your rim, hub, spokes, and nipples. Lace the spokes through the hub and connect them through the rim to the nipples. Now add the initial tension before transitioning to the truing stand. At this point, you're going to add tension to the spokes one side at a time, then squeeze them, check the tension, check the dish, and repeat the process until you're at 60 to 70% of final tension. Then you'll do your first bit of truing to make the wheel as round and straight as possible. Now it's back to adding tension, checking the tension, and checking the dish until you hit about 90%. Then you'll do another true, bring the spokes up to final tension, confirm your dish is perfect, and do a final true before sending these wheels off into the world.